Asset to sell. Last thing is becoming an executive. All right, so we've gone from operator to executive, and that's great, but you got to be good at that. And that's typically like showing up to a brand new job that you've never been trained at before. So I'm going to tell you about my first day as a true executive. So I got up early. I got my kids lunch and breakfast, and I got them on the bus. This is when they were really little. And that was a really big deal because I remember getting up and my kids like, "What are you doing here?" Because typically it was my wife that did that because she was home with the kids and did all that stuff. So I was pretty excited about that. And then I get to work and it's like from 8:30 to 9, I tried to work 9 to 10. I stared at the walls. Like I've never been less productive than I was. And it was like I was frozen in time, and I would like look at the clock, and I was in the back room and I could hear treatment up there. And I took everything from me. I almost had to lock the door from the other side to not go out there because that's where I was really comfortable, right? That's where I had been for, 15 years. That's what I did. And so I called Kevin and Arlen. I said, like, what am I supposed to do here? And so they kind of said, hey, I remember Kevin said, it's going to take about 3 months before you can figure out what, what you're going to do. So just give yourself some time. And I really appreciate that he said that because, man, I felt terrible after the first day. I was like, oh my God, I was useless. At least before I could use my hands and treat patients and bring revenue. And I sat in the back and didn't even bring any revenue. And like, what was going on? And that's, what we've been working on since I got out of treatment, right? That's all I work on. I work on becoming a better executive. And Arlen, tell me about that, because I remember we were at a live event and we were sitting around, I think George Hess was there. We're sitting at the table and Arlen's like, if I want to have a $10 million practice, I've got to become a $10 million CEO. And here's the problem. I need to become a $10 million CEO way before we're doing 10 million in revenue. Because if I don't, I'll never get there. So tell me about that, Arlen.
And that's where you need the time that you have now, if you're not treating, to really continue to grow yourself, right? And we're never gonna get done growing because if you don't grow, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So, but talking about being a true executive, how do you get to be that $10 million executive from being, let's say, a $5 million executive? You can't be the same person. And that's where you need to use this valuable time where you're not treating. You need to structure it. And there is a way, and we'll show you how we do that. But you're right. I mean, even when I first got out, the common mistake that owners will make here, they get out, right? They're completely out of treatment, but they feel lost. It's like, wow, I've been treating all this time. And this is when most owners get sucked back into treating because it's something comfortable to go back to. They get back into the whirlwind of the everyday stuff in the clinic. And that's where you need to be careful when you first step out. You need to structure your day and your week so you can make that as effective as your time as possible to get you to that $10 million executive from being a $5 million executive.
Yeah. So another way to think about it is, sometimes those numbers are hard to comprehend, but if you just take visits, every physical therapist knows visits, right? So let's say you're doing 100, 200 visits a week. Frank Cawley just told me he broke his record recently. He did almost 1,200 visits a week. So think about the skill set that you have to have in order to run. Like if we put you in charge of a practice that was doing 1,200 visits a week, and you're currently doing 200 visits a week, you just don't have the skill set there. And sometimes you don't even know where to find that, but it's possible, right? So there's people that are doing it. So it's definitely possible. There's locations that are doing 3,000 visits a week, 10,000 visits a week. And there's executives that are running those organizations and they're running really well. So it's possible. So how did they figure it out, or how did they develop the skills to do that? That's what you have to kind of find out, and kind of setting your goals and where you want to be. Maybe you don't want to have a practice that's $10 million. That's fine. It doesn't mean that because I do and you don't, that I'm better or than you, you're better than me. It's just kind of setting where you want to get to. So what does an executive do? So there's three things they really do. They build systems, they develop a team, and they hold people accountable. And again, these skills are not developed by treating patients all day. It's just really hard to do. So building systems of operational efficiency and financial performance. So again, that's what we talked about earlier about kind of growing up as a business owner. If you're just going to be, one man, one woman show, you really don't have to develop these things. You're really good at treating patients. You'll build a reputation, and the practice will just rely on you solely. If that's what you want to do, I think that's great. I think we need practices like that for sure. But if that's not what you want to do, if you want more in terms of ownership of your time and building an asset that you can actually sell when you're done, then you're going to have to develop this stuff and coaching, really. I mean, that's where I spend most of my time. I used to think or have the understanding that my product was physical therapy. And here's the truth. You can go anywhere and get physical therapy. Like if they wipe physical therapy, if something happens to me and my practice goes, there's not going to be people crying in the streets like, oh, there's nowhere to get physical therapy. There's tons of places to get physical therapy. What my product is my people. So I've got to develop my people, and that's where I win. So that's when people come into your practice, and this, like people say, oh my God, this is like so much better or different than other places I've gone for physical therapy. What do you do here? If you're the only person that does that, you can do that, but you'll never have the impact that you can have if you don't grow and expand your business and holding people accountable. So it's a really tough transition going from like peer to peer. So when I was, and if you're in this situation, if you're an owner and you're treating patients, it's just a different relationship that you have with your staff, with your clinical staff. They kind of see you as an equal, which is great. And then when you go from treating clinicians to executive, and all of a sudden you're coaching and you're holding them accountable to stuff after you've learned what metrics to hold them accountable to and the systems to do that, it's a difficult transition to do that. But with people, again, everybody has done this. So this has been done before. We're not inventing anything new. We're just kind of showing you how to do it and making the road a little less rough.